Late at night, sometime around 1987. You are sitting on the couch in your bathrobe, flipping through channels because nothing good is on. And then you land on it. A man with perfect teeth, holding up a contraption you have never seen before, promising it will solve a problem you did not even know you had. For the low price of $19.95 plus shipping and handling, this thing could be yours. You did not need it. Nobody needed it. But something about the way he said, "But wait, there is more," made your hand reach for the phone anyway. The 1980s were the golden age of the television infomercial, and the products that came through your screen were some of the strangest things ever manufactured. Here are 25 of the most bizarre TV shopping products from the 1980s that completely failed. So hit subscribe because this list only gets weirder from here. Number 25. The Inside the Shell Egg Scrambler. Somewhere in the Ronco headquarters, someone had an idea. What if you could scramble an egg before you even cracked it open? The device looked like a small plastic base with a thin needle sticking out of the top. You would press your egg down onto the needle, which pierced a tiny hole in the shell. Then the machine would spin the egg at high speed, scrambling the contents while the shell stayed intact. The infomercial made it look like kitchen magic. In reality, you ended up with a lot of cracked shells, egg on your counter, and a gadget that took longer to use than just cracking the egg into a bowl and stirring it with a fork. By the end of the decade, it was sitting in the back of a drawer in just about every kitchen that had ordered one. Number 24. The Ronco Smokeless Ashtray. If you grew up in a house where somebody smoked indoors, you know what the living room smelled like by Sunday evening. Ron Popeil had a solution. The smokeless ashtray was a round device with a small fan inside that supposedly sucked the cigarette smoke down and away before it could drift through the room. You would set your cigarette on the edge, and a little motor would pull the smoke into a carbon filter. The problem was that the fan was about as powerful as a hamster on a wheel. It caught maybe a quarter of the smoke. The rest drifted upward like it always did. The filter needed replacing constantly, and the whole unit hummed just loud enough to be annoying. It solved nothing, but it sold by the thousands. Number 23. The Electronic Pest Repeller. This was a small plastic box you plugged into the wall. According to the commercial, it sent out ultrasonic sound waves that would drive away mice, rats, cockroaches, and just about every other pest you could think of. No traps, no poison, no mess. Just plug it in and your pest problem was over. The devices sold in enormous numbers throughout the 1980s. The only problem was that study after study showed they did almost nothing. Mice would walk right past them. Roaches did not seem to notice. The Federal Trade Commission eventually stepped in and started cracking down on the more outrageous claims. But by then, millions of Americans had one of these things humming quietly in a wall socket, doing absolutely nothing. Number 22. Ronco Electric Scissors. Ron Popeil looked at a perfectly good pair of scissors and thought, what if these needed batteries? The Ronco electric scissors were a motorized cutting device that vibrated rapidly to help you cut through fabric, wrapping paper, cardboard, and anything else you might normally cut with, well, regular scissors. The infomercial showed a woman effortlessly gliding through bolt after bolt of fabric like a hot knife through butter. At home, the motor was loud, the batteries drained after a few uses, and the blades jammed on anything thicker than construction paper. The vibration made it hard to cut a straight line, and wrapping paper came out looking like it had been attacked by a cat. They were heavier than normal scissors, more expensive than normal scissors, and worse at cutting than normal scissors. It was a solution looking for a problem, and the problem never showed up. Number 21. The Buttoneer. The idea was simple. If a button fell off your shirt, you did not need a needle and thread anymore. The buttoneer looked like a small plastic gun that shot a tiny plastic fastener through the fabric and the button, attaching them together in seconds. The commercials made it look like a miracle for anyone who could not sew. But the plastic fasteners were flimsy. They held for a while, but after a few trips through the washing machine, your button was hanging by a thread, sometimes literally. The fasteners also left visible plastic nubs on the inside of your shirt that scratched your skin. Most people used it once, put it in a drawer, and went back to asking their mother to sew the button back on properly. Number 20. The Abdominizer. This was a curved plastic seat with a spring-loaded back support. You sat on it, leaned back, and rocked. That was the entire exercise. According to the infomercial, 5 minutes a day on the Abdominizer would give you a flat stomach without any of the pain of actual sit-ups. The device showed up on late-night television constantly in the late 1980s, usually demonstrated by a fitness model who clearly had never needed the product in the first place. The secret the commercial did not mention was that rocking on a curved plastic seat burns about as many calories as sitting in a regular chair. Your abdominal muscles barely engaged because the spring did all the work for you. You would rock back and forth, feel a slight stretch in your lower back, and convince yourself something was happening. It was not. The sound was part of the experience. Every time you rocked back, the plastic base creaked against whatever floor you had it on. On carpet, it slid. On tile, it squeaked. On hardwood, it scratched. Your spouse would hear you from the other room doing your 5 minutes of rocking and say nothing because they knew the thing would be in the garage within a month. The real genius of the Abdominizer was not the product itself, but the marketing. The infomercials ran during the hours when people were most vulnerable, late at night after a heavy dinner, feeling guilty about the second helping. That is when the phone number on the screen looked most appealing. The payment plan made it seem like nothing, just a few dollars spread across several installments. Millions of units shipped. Within a year, most of them were collecting dust under beds, holding open screen doors, or sitting at garage sales with a $3 price tag. The flat stomach never arrived, but the monthly credit card charge did. It was the prototype for every ab gadget that followed, from the ab roller to the ab lounge, and not a single one of them worked either. Number 19. The Ronco Bottle and Jar Cutter. Ron Popeil wanted you to believe that the empty wine bottles in your recycling bin were actually a goldmine of free glassware. The bottle and jar cutter was a device that scored a line around a glass bottle using a small cutting wheel. You would then pour hot water over the score line, followed by cold water, and the bottle was supposed to crack cleanly in two, giving you a drinking glass. The infomercial showed perfect cuts every time. At home, bottles shattered. They cracked diagonally. They left jagged edges that could cut your lip. Even when it worked, the rim was rough and uneven, and you ended up drinking out of something that looked like it belonged in a college dorm during finals week. Number 18. Mr. Microphone. This was a wireless microphone that transmitted your voice over a short-range FM radio frequency. The idea was that you could sing along to the radio and hear your own voice coming through the speakers. The commercials showed teenagers cruising down the street, holding Mr. Microphone out the car window, broadcasting their voice to anyone whose radio happened to be tuned to the right frequency. One famous commercial showed a young man pulling up next to a woman and saying, "Hey, good looking, we will be back to pick you up later." In practice, the range was terrible, the audio quality was worse, and it picked up static from anything electronic within 10 feet. It was also, technically, broadcasting on a frequency without a license, which nobody seemed to worry about at the time. It sold well at first, then vanished almost overnight. Number 17. The Personal Face Tanning Lamp. Before tanning beds were on every corner, there was the home face tanner. This was a small, ultraviolet lamp mounted on a stand designed to sit on your bathroom counter. You would lean your face toward it, close your eyes, and bake yourself for 10 to 15 minutes at a time while the lamp hummed and the heat built up around your cheeks and forehead. The commercials promised a healthy, sun-kissed glow all year round, especially during those long winter months. Nobody mentioned skin damage. Nobody mentioned the risk of burns. Nobody mentioned that staring into an ultraviolet light source was not what your eyes were designed to do. The instruction manual told you to wear the included plastic goggles, which covered roughly half your eye area, leaving you with pale raccoon circles around your eyes if you actually managed to get a tan. Most people just ended up with dry, red, peeling skin and a strange, warm electrical smell lingering in the bathroom for hours. Number 16. The trim comb. It looked like a regular plastic comb, but hidden between the teeth was a small razor blade. The idea was that you could comb your hair and trim it at the same time. No barber needed. The infomercial showed people running this thing through their hair and coming out with a perfect layered cut. At home, you ran it through once and immediately felt something was wrong. The blade was either too aggressive, leaving bald patches, or too dull, catching and pulling your hair. There was no way to control how much it cut. You could not see what you were doing, and by the time you realized you had taken too much off one side, it was too late. The mirror does not lie, and neither did the lopsided haircut the trim comb gave you. Number 15. The vibrating belt machine. This one had actually been around since the 1950s, but it had a massive resurgence on late-night TV shopping in the 1980s. The concept was beautifully absurd. You stood in front of a machine, wrapped a wide canvas belt around your waist or hips, and the machine vibrated at high speed. The fat was supposed to jiggle itself away. You just stood there. That was the workout. Standing. The commercials showed smiling women in leotards standing with their hands on their hips while their midsections shook like a bowl of gelatin. The noise these machines made was something between a washing machine on spin cycle and a lawnmower. Your whole body vibrated, your teeth chattered, and your vision blurred slightly from the shaking. Doctors said it did nothing. Common sense said it did nothing. But the before and after photos were very persuasive at 2 in the morning, and the machines kept selling well into the late 1980s. Number 14. The Epilady. When the Epilady launched in 1986, it was supposed to revolutionize hair removal. It was a handheld electronic device with a coiled metal spring that rotated at high speed. As the spring turned, it caught individual hairs and ripped them out by the roots. The idea was that it would leave your legs smoother than shaving, for longer than shaving, without the mess of wax strips. What the advertising did not emphasize was the pain. The sensation of a rotating metal coil yanking dozens of hairs from your skin simultaneously was, by most accounts, somewhere between a bee sting and a medieval punishment. Women across the country turned it on, pressed it against their shin, and immediately understood that this was not going to be a pleasant evening. The noise alone was unsettling. A high-pitched mechanical whine that got louder when it caught a thick patch of hair. And it did not always pull the hair cleanly. Sometimes it snapped the hair, sometimes it caught skin, and sometimes it just stopped mid-rotation with a clump of hair wound around the coil like thread on a spool. You had to unwind it by hand, picking individual hairs out of the mechanism like you were performing surgery on a tiny metal animal. The bathroom counter afterward told the whole story. Tiny dots of blood on your shin, a pile of loose hairs on the floor, and the Epilady sitting there buzzing, waiting for you to try the other leg. Most women did not try the other leg. The Epilady actually sold well at first, moving millions of units globally. But the return rate was staggering. Customer complaints poured in about bruising, ingrown hairs, and skin irritation. Entire comedy routines were written about the experience of using one. It became less of a beauty product and more of a cultural punchline. By the early 1990s, newer and less torturous hair removal options had pushed the Epilady to the back of the bathroom cabinet, right next to the trim comb from earlier on this list. Number 13. The Popeil Pocket Fisherman. Ron Popeil strikes again. The Pocket Fisherman was a small fold-up fishing rod that was supposed to fit in your glove compartment, your tackle box, or your back pocket. The idea was spontaneous fishing. You see a lake on your drive home from work, pull over, whip out your Pocket Fisherman, and catch dinner. The commercial showed Popeil himself reeling in fish after fish from a sunny dock. The casting mechanism was a tiny spring-loaded reel, and the rod was so short that casting more than a few feet was nearly impossible. The line tangled constantly. The reel jammed if you wound it too fast, and the whole thing felt like you were trying to catch a bass with a car antenna. Serious fishermen laughed at it. Casual fishermen bought it, tried it once at a pond, caught nothing, and put it back in the glove compartment where it stayed for the next decade. Number 12. Gravity boots. After a certain famous movie scene in 1980 showed a man hanging upside down from a bar in his apartment, inversion therapy exploded. Gravity boots were heavy ankle clamps that hooked over a specially mounted bar in a doorway. You strapped them on, jumped up, hooked your feet over the bar, and hung upside down like a bat in your own hallway. The infomercials claimed it would decompress your spine, relieve back pain, improve circulation, and make you taller. In practice, the blood rushed to your head within 30 seconds. Your face turned red. Your ankles ached from the metal clamps. Your shirt fell over your face. And getting back up required abdominal strength that most buyers simply did not have. More than a few people had to yell for a family member to come help them down, which was not the dignified health experience the brochure had promised. The fad burned hot for about 2 years and then quietly disappeared, leaving behind a generation of bent doorway frames and scuffed ceiling paint. Number 11. The Ronco Rhinestone and Stud Setter. Before the Bedazzler became the more famous version, Ronco had its own rhinestone attachment tool. It was a small handheld press that punched decorative studs and rhinestones into denim, leather, and fabric. The infomercial showed people transforming plain jean jackets into sparkling showpieces that looked like they belonged on a country music stage. Teenagers loved the idea. Mothers regretted buying it the moment their daughter bedazzled the living room curtains. The rhinestones popped off after a few wears. The studs bent. The press required more hand strength than most people expected, and it left visible puncture holes in whatever you decorated, so if the rhinestone fell off, you were left with a jacket full of tiny holes and nothing to show for it. People bedazzled everything in sight for about 6 months, and then the novelty wore off faster than the rhinestones did. Number 10. The Magnetic Therapy Bracelet. Throughout the 1980s, late-night television was flooded with advertisements for bracelets, insoles, necklaces, and wraps embedded with magnets. The pitch was simple. Magnets improved blood flow. Improved blood flow reduced pain. Therefore, wearing a magnetic bracelet would cure your arthritis, your back pain, your headaches, and half a dozen other ailments. The testimonials were always delivered by people who swore on their lives that the bracelet had changed everything for them. The science was always absent. Medical authorities repeatedly pointed out that the magnets in these products were far too weak to have any measurable effect on blood flow or tissue. The magnets in most of these bracelets were weaker than the ones holding your grocery list to the refrigerator door. It did not matter. The bracelets sold steadily for years, mostly because the placebo effect is powerful and the price point was low enough that people figured it was worth a try. Number 9. The Cellulite Roller. This was a handheld device covered in small rubber knobs or wooden rollers. You were supposed to roll it vigorously over your thighs, hips, and stomach, and the massaging action would break up cellulite and smooth your skin. Some versions were electric and vibrated. Others were manual and required you to roll back and forth like you were tenderizing a steak. The commercials showed toned women demonstrating the device on already smooth skin. At home, all you got was red, irritated skin and a sore arm from all the rolling. Dermatologists pointed out that cellulite is a structural feature of skin and fat that no amount of surface rolling would change, but the rollers kept selling because the promise was too appealing to ignore. Number 8. The Facial Exerciser. The concept was that your face had muscles. Those muscles could be exercised, and exercising them would reduce wrinkles and tighten sagging skin. The product was a small spring-loaded device that you placed between your lips and squeezed repeatedly, like doing tiny push-ups with your mouth. Some versions looked like a pair of plastic tongs. Others were a single curved spring that you bit down on. The infomercials showed women in their 50s with suspiciously smooth skin, smiling and squeezing their facial exercisers while a narrator promised visible results in just weeks. The reality was different. You sat in your bathroom, squeezing a plastic spring between your lips, looking like you were trying to eat a very small, very resistant sandwich. Your husband would walk in, see you pumping a spring between your lips, and walk right back out without saying a word. That was probably the correct response. The soreness in your jaw was real. The wrinkle reduction was not. Some people developed jaw pain from overuse. Others found that the spring snapped without warning, smacking them in the lip hard enough to leave a mark, which was the opposite of the beauty result they were going for. The before and after photos in the brochure were, as usual, a masterclass in lighting and camera angles. Dermatologists explained that facial muscles do not respond to this kind of exercise the way biceps do, and that repeatedly squeezing and releasing could actually create new wrinkles by creasing the skin in the same spot, over and over. The facial exerciser was one of those products that made perfect sense for about 3 seconds, right until you thought about it for a fourth second. It sold in huge numbers during the mid-1980s, and by the end of the decade, it had become one more item in the bathroom drawer of forgotten promises, right between the face tanner and the cellulite roller. Number 7. The sauna suit. This was a full bodysuit made of heavy vinyl or PVC. You zipped yourself into it, did some light exercise or just sat on the couch, and the suit trapped your body heat, making you sweat heavily. The theory was that sweating equaled weight loss, and technically it did. You would step on the scale after 30 minutes in the suit and weigh less, but you had not lost fat. You had lost water, and you gained it all back the moment you drank a glass of water. The suits were hot, uncomfortable, and created a suffocating plastic greenhouse effect around your body. Some people overheated, others broke out in rashes. The weight always came back, but the sauna suit kept selling because the number on the scale was very convincing in the short term. Number 6. The electric tie rack. This was a motorized rack that mounted inside your closet. It had a series of hooks arranged in a circle, and at the push of a button, the hooks rotated slowly, presenting each tie one at a time like a tiny carousel for neckwear. The infomercial made it look like the pinnacle of organized living, something a Wall Street executive would own. In practice, it was a battery-powered device that solved a problem most people handled perfectly well with a hook on the back of a door. The motor was noisy, the rotation was painfully slow, and you stood there watching your ties creep past like luggage on an airport carousel, waiting for the one you wanted. Ties would occasionally slip off the hooks and land in a wrinkled pile at the bottom of the closet. The batteries died at the worst moments. It was the kind of product that seemed impressive in the box but ridiculous the moment you installed it, and most closets were not big enough for it anyway. Number 5. The home electrolysis kit. The promise was permanent hair removal from the comfort of your own bathroom. The kit included a small handheld probe that you were supposed to insert into individual hair follicles one at a time and deliver a tiny electric current to destroy the root. Professional electrolysis is a real and effective procedure, performed by trained technicians using magnified lenses and precise equipment. The home version gave you a blunt needle, a battery pack, and a set of instructions that assumed you had the steady hand of a surgeon and the patience of a saint. Each hair took 30 seconds to a minute. A single leg could take weeks. Most people gave up after treating a patch the size of a postage stamp, having experienced nothing but frustration, tiny red welts, and hairs that grew right back. Number 4. The Ronco Food Dehydrator. Ron Popeil wanted America to dehydrate everything. Fruit, meat, vegetables, herbs, flowers. If it had moisture in it, Popeil wanted it dry. The infomercial was 30 minutes of a man placing sliced bananas onto plastic trays, pressing a button, and pulling out perfectly dried banana chips hours later. He made beef jerky, he made dried apple rings, he made dried tomatoes that he sprinkled on pasta like he had just invented Italian cooking. He made it look like you would use this machine every single day for the rest of your life. Most people used it twice. Once to make jerky, which came out either tough enough to break a tooth or not dry enough and vaguely concerning from a food safety standpoint. And once to try dried fruit, which came out leathery and oddly flavored. Then the dehydrator went on top of the refrigerator, where it sat for years, taking up space and collecting dust, a monument to weekend ambitions that did not survive Monday morning. Number 3. The Cap Snaffler. This was another Ronco creation, and its name alone should have been a warning sign. The Cap Snaffler was a wall-mounted bottle opener that not only removed the cap from your bottle but also caught it in a small container so it would not fall on the floor. The infomercial treated this like a breakthrough in beverage technology. In reality, it was a bottle opener with a cup underneath it. You could achieve the same result by opening your bottle over a trash can. But Ron Popeil sold it with so much enthusiasm and so many camera angles that people ordered it anyway. It worked, technically. It opened bottles and caught caps. But the idea that anyone needed a dedicated wall-mounted device for this task was the kind of logic that only made sense during a late-night infomercial. Number 2. The Flowbee. Take a vacuum cleaner hose, attach a hair-cutting device to the end of it, turn on the vacuum, let it suck your hair upward, and cut it to a uniform length. That was the Flowbee. The inventor came up with the idea while watching someone use an industrial vacuum near a workbench, and he thought, that principle could cut hair. The infomercial showed people attaching the Flowbee to their home vacuum and giving themselves what looked like a reasonable haircut. At home, the results were less predictable. The suction pulled your hair at strange angles. The cutting length was hard to control. The noise of a vacuum cleaner running next to your ear for 20 minutes was not what most people would call a relaxing salon experience. And yet the Flowbee developed a small but devoted following. Some families used it for years, giving each other vacuum-powered haircuts in the kitchen. It never went mainstream, and it became one of the most parodied products of the decade. Number 1. GLH, Formula Number 9. Great-looking hair. That is what GLH stood for, and that is what Ron Popeil promised you would get from a can of colored spray. GLH Formula Number 9 was, at its core, spray paint for your scalp. You held the can a few inches from your thinning spot, pressed the nozzle, and a mist of colored fibers settled onto your head, covering the bald patch and making it look, at least from a distance, like you had a full head of hair. The infomercial was legendary. Popeil sprayed it on bald men in the audience, spun them around, and let the camera zoom in on their suddenly full-looking heads. The crowd gasped. It looked convincing on television. In person, it looked like someone had spray-painted your head. It smudged on pillowcases. It ran in the rain. A strong gust of wind could rearrange your entire hairstyle, and getting it off required serious scrubbing. GLH was the product that perfectly captured everything bizarre about 1980s TV shopping. A problem that millions of people genuinely had, met with a solution so absurd that the only reason it worked at all was because the man selling it believed in it more than anyone had ever believed in anything. It was confidence in a can, and the confidence washed off in the shower. If anything on this list took you back to those late nights in front of the television, drop a comment and tell us which product your family actually ordered. Everybody had at least one. And if you know someone who remembers flipping through those channels and reaching for the phone, share this video with them. Hit subscribe to keep these stories alive, and we will see you in the next one.